Do you guys have access to the video right now? You're all on. Well, welcome to anyone out there. It looks like there are uh-oh. Okay. It looks like people are having some trouble signing in right now. And so I'm getting some texts from folks that they're running into some issues right now. Maybe Alex and Pat, would you be able to turn off your video for the moment, just so we make sure to keep as much bandwidth going as possible?
Yeah.
Hey, Danny, I'm thinking maybe some of us are in the wrong one since several of them pop up. Because
Yeah,
what I'm playing it is a recording.
Yeah, that's unfortunately what seems to be the case now. There are 3 that say they're live right now, and I don't know why 2 of them are still saying that they're live, because they're not. I'm going to let people know.
That doesn't look like it. Okay, that's gotta be it. Danny, I'll go ahead and post in those other spaces if I can.
That would be awesome. If you can say that those are working right now.
Okay.
So it's that, it looks like it's that first one at the very top that's working, right?
Yep. Darn. Well, this is apparently a problem of practicing beforehand. You create legacies online that can't be deleted right now. Okay, so it looks like 8 folks are watching now on one of them. So greetings to anyone tuning into the Where's My Wildfire or What's My Wildfire Risk webinar. I apologize. We are having a few technical difficulties with YouTube right now, but it looks like it's getting all sorted out. We have the as you can see that there are a few videos on YouTube that say that are live, but Obviously, this is the only one that is. And I'm gonna jump in probably just a moment or two. I want to see if anyone else can work through any difficulties if they're having them online, and then we'll start probably in 1 or 2 minutes with the webinar. Oh, yep. Okay, it looks like Lo is able to make it on, and I'm hoping that Floyd will be able to make it on as well.
Hey, Danny, I don't have an option that I can find to stop my camera.
You're not finding an option to start your camera?
Yeah,
Or you're not finding an option to stop your camera? That's okay. Oh,
Yeah.
I can actually do it for you. There we go.
perfect.
Okay, it looks like folks are now able to log in. I'm just going to wait until 10 after, and I will jump into the meeting. I apologize for the delayed start. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Danny Margolis. I am the coordinator for the Dolores Watershed Resilient Forest Collaborative. And we are putting on, as you know, a webinar this evening called What's My Wildfire Risk? And we're looking at wildfire risk from our front door to the forest, and then ways that we can start mitigating that risk. I'm really excited about this event today and really appreciate everyone for tuning in. We have a number of other folks on the line, and just want to say, please bear with us. This is kind of a new technical reality that we're trying to meet and figure out right now. And so there are a number of folks on a Zoom meeting in the background, and we're broadcasting obviously through YouTube. So the folks who are on the line are myself, Chief Mike Zion, with the Dolores Fire and Rescue, Patrick Seekins, who's the Fire Management Officer with the Dolores District on the San Juan National Forest, Alex Graff, the Coordinator for Wildfire Adaptive Partnership in Montezuma and Dolores counties, and Becca Samulski, who is the Director of Fire Adapted Colorado. Everyone's going to be speaking at different times this evening, and a few kind of housekeeping functions and logistical things I want to talk about are please use the chat function. If you have questions, if you have any technical difficulties within YouTube itself, it should just be on the right-hand side of the video, and it should be pretty easy to enter it. You might need a YouTube or Gmail account. It should be pretty. I apologize if you can't figure it out. If you can, if you have any difficulties and can't use the chat function, just get in contact with myself or Alex or anyone else after the fact, after this webinar, and we'll answer any questions that you may have. We'll have time for some questions that you can pose in the chat after each individual talks today. And yeah, if there are too many questions, or if there are a lot of questions, we might push some of them to the end of the webinar. And just as a heads up, there is about a 20-second delay between what we're saying on our end and what you're hearing on the YouTube end. And so we're going to try to factor that in when we go from one person to another speaker. But if a question pops up in your head while we're speaking, just throw it in the chat as quickly as possible, and that will make sure we'll see it, by the time that we end, one person ends speaking. So Alex and Becca are watching the chat right now, and we'll make sure to catch anything that comes along it. So I'll let them introduce themselves a little bit more when they speak, but want to dive right in. And so, we all know that that wildfires happen in Southwest Colorado, and I'm assuming that everyone remembers 2018 when the Burrow Fire, and particularly the Plateau Fire, burned close to the town of Dolores. The 416 fire was burning nearby as well. While these fires weren't particularly destructive to properties, at least directly, they certainly had a lot of ecological, social, and economic impacts on the area. And fire is, a normal part of our forests. We're not trying to remove fire from our ecosystems. Firstly, simply because we can't do that unless we pave over everything. But secondly, because fire is a key component of healthy forests and ecosystems. Our trees, like the ponderosa pines pictured here, have co-evolved with fire and really rely on the periodic disturbance. The key, they help keep forests thinned and help, minimize the possibility of a high severity wildfire. That said, due to a variety of factors, including fire suppression and land management practice, previous land management practices and climate change, we also know that fires are increasingly intense, large, and dangerous. So considering the importance and reality of fire in our area, an important question is how can we really live safely with fire on the landscape and reduce the likelihood of negative consequences of fire to valued parts of our region? So when we start to map everything out, you really see how difficult a job land managers have and fire responders have to plan for, protect, and manage our key social, economic, and ecological values. So as a quick example, we have the critical need to protect our human communities, quite certainly, but we also have critical drinking water sources that have some risk of water quality impacts due to post-fire erosion. We have valued recreation areas like Boggy Draw. We have important trout streams. We have elk migration corridors. We have important timber resources. We have power line infrastructure. And so, I want to use this just as an example of how all of the values map out on our landscape. And it illustrates the diverse considerations that need to be incorporated to proactively maintain, enhance, or at least diminish the negative consequences to these values if a wildfire does occur. So some of the values that are on our landscape And the values that our landscape has is what makes us able to live here, but it also is our livelihood. It's also what makes this area enjoyable to live in. And we really need to consider all of these factors in how we address wildfire, especially with reducing risk to our communities, kind of first and foremost. And so in 2015, the Dolores Watershed Resilient Forest Collaborative formed out of really these considerations and concerns. We're a network of local, regional, state, and federal agencies and organizations that collaborate to promote forest, community, and watershed resilience, particularly, but not exclusively, to disturbances like wildfire. Our main focal area is the Upper Dolores River watershed, but we also focus really throughout all of Montezuma and Dolores counties itself. So we have, as you can see from this list here, a really diverse partner list and really strong participation from a variety of partners that quite literally come to the table, as you can see in the above photo. And ideally, we go out in the field all together too. And all these partners represent key values, key sectors and perspectives of how to maintain a landscape that supports the ecosystems, but also more broadly, all of our human and social and economic values on the landscape too. I just want to put a plug in. We hold monthly meetings and periodic tours that everyone is available to attend. And I really want to invite everyone to come out there as well. The top image is one from the Dolores Water Conservancy District, where we hold all of our meetings, but in reality, most all of our meetings look like this right now. So I'm sure most everyone is getting used to it, just this meeting that we're having. What we do as a collaborative, we have a few different focal areas as a group, but we work to collaboratively implement forest management activities. That's one of our main goals, including treatments, mapping and analyses, policy recommendations, and adaptive management based on the diverse values that all of our different partners and stakeholders bring. Another goal of our group is to increase the capacity, viability, and sustainability of the local forest products industry, not mainly, but to also be able to do cost-effective forest treatments to reduce the risk of wildfire throughout the area. Another key component of our group is to foster a network of professionals and residents to better prepare for, respond to, and aid recovery from severe wildfire, post-fire effects, and other disturbances. And that's one of the things that we're really trying to do today, and help communicate some of the information that's been done in the area from Dwarf, but some of the other partner organizations as well. And so one of the main goals for today is to draw out connections between our forests and communities. And so what happens within the National Forest is directly related to, risk within the National Forest. Wildfire activity within the National Forest is directly related to the town of Dolores and other properties in between and nearby. And also, what happens on private lands as well also affects what happens within the town of Dolores and the National Forest as well. And so draw the connections between forests and communities, highlight the important roles of our wildfire responders, a number of whom are on the line today, and also provide resources and information to all of you to help mitigate wildfire risk on your property and help make Dolores more fire adapted. And so, one thing that I want to emphasize here is this is kind of a first entry. Ideally, this type of event could be held more in person and wouldn't be so unidirectional, projected out to all of you. But this is the reality that we're all living in right now. And want to make sure that all of you come out with some identified resources and next steps if you do want to pursue this. Especially Alex Graff will be giving you some resources to walk away with. Dwarf is going to be holding more public tours, and don't hesitate to reach out to me. And in fact, I encourage you to reach out to me if you're interested, and you can visit our website for more information about those public tours. And I think that's all I'm gonna say right now. I'll jump back on when I talk a little bit about some of the rapid risk assessments that were done. And I am now going to hand it over, unless there are any questions right now, to Patrick Seekins, who's going to be giving an update on the seasonal fire outlook for the area for the summer, and going to be talking about some of the connections between some of the work that the Forest Service is doing, how their operations are impacted by COVID-19, and some of the relationship between the work that they're doing in the town. So let me work some of this logistics. Okay, Pat, do you have a PowerPoint to share?
Yes, I'll see if I can pull that up. Would you be able to share that for me by chance?
Yeah, I can share that for you. And then do you have that PowerPoint available or pulled up right now?
No, yeah, I can.
Oh, no problem. No problem, no problem.
Yeah, so it's pulling up right now. Okay, I have it pulled up now.
And then you should have the capability to share your screen.
All right, can you see that?
Nope, not yet. Perfect.
All right, how about now?
Yep, got it.
All right. So we've got the PowerPoint here. Before I go into the PowerPoint, I'll just do an intro. I'm Patrick Seekins. I'm the District Fire Management Officer for the Dolores Ranger District, San Juan National Forest. And before we get into the fire season outlook, just briefly touch on what we've been doing over the past year or two, really focused on fire prevention and what we can do proactive treatment to prevent catastrophic wildfires. So over the last, within 2 years, we've accomplished 9,000 acres of prescribed fire, which are planned ignitions, pre-planned, under the right conditions, just to reduce the understory and the future fire potential. So that's been really successful. It's definitely a proactive approach that has been a long time coming, and we've gotten some successful treatment on the ground over the last year, accomplishing that to kind of build that resilient landscape for the long term. And our focus has been really on the wildland urban interface and our southern forest boundary, protecting those communities, and really kind of came to light in 2018 with the Plateau Fire that moved to the south pretty rapidly, and having that somewhat established and planned for 2019, it really boded kind of the success story of where we definitely want to treat the landscape for a lot of benefits. So we've got a lot of tools in our toolbox on the federal side, and with prescribed fire treatments, it's definitely for the taxpayer, it's a very cheap treatment method compared to mechanical. So there's been a lot of planning involved. We had a lot of successful implementation last year. For those who were in the community, there was probably a fair amount of smoke in the air, but it was very beneficial to the land, reducing those critical fuels that build up in the ponderosa pine. Just a little backstory on that. The ponderosa pine is typically a fire-dependent ecosystem, and that species in this landscape thrives on low to moderate intensity surface fire that's critical for regeneration of the small seedlings in the pine trees, some of that, and to reduce some of the gamble oak understory that can provide a ladder fuel for crown fire under the worst case scenario, like a 2018 fire season. So that's just kind of highlighting some of the success stories there. Over the last couple of years, obviously we are going to plans to continue that over the next few years. But this year, 2020, with the conditions we're currently in and a lot of other factors, we likely will not see a lot of prescribed fire in 2020 due to those extreme conditions that we're really already facing now. And it looks like we're going to be in those conditions June and July prior to the onset of the monsoons. So another tool we have and have had in the past and will continue to use in the future under the right conditions is a natural cause wildfire caused typically by lightning, that under the right conditions and a lot of pre-planning with all our local specialists and community involvement to manage that fire for resource benefit and multiple of objectives similar to a prescribed fire, where under the right conditions we get to low to moderate surface fire spread. And the goal with that, along with prescribed fire, is to limit any mortality in the actual standing canopy of the trees, but really just to remove the needle cast and some of the understory in the gamble oak to reduce that potential fire hazard in the future. So my take there, really the take home, is that proactive approach to limit those fuels and to limit catastrophic wildfire prior to a hot, dry fire season that we have experienced in the past and will likely continue to experience in the future. So with that, I guess we'll go into the PowerPoint and talk about this year's fire season outlook. So on this first slide, you can see is just kind of a lot of charts there based on our remote weather stations, getting some reasons on kind of where we're at currently as of a few days ago, and kind of the trends we're in. We're trending well above average right now on our energy release components, which is a good indicator for fire potential and how fire will spread if there was a start, whether that was human caused or naturally caused. And talking about recent conditions, we've continued to have above normal temperatures, below normal precipitation. We really haven't had any measurable precipitation in the form of rain in over a month and a half. And that looks to continue into June, as we typically have a dry June month. As you can see, yeah, really, we're talking 0.2 of an inch of rain over a long period of time. So, and then we talk about snowpack. So we kind of try to put all this together with moisture and drought and everything that goes into that. Our 2020 snowpack was fairly decent early on, but later this spring, as well as you all know, we kind of missed the snow, and we started getting above normal temperatures, and the snow came off really quickly. So our snowpack deficits have definitely come off really fast. So that's where we're trending with snowpack. As you can see in all these surrounding mountains, it's coming off really fast. And we talk about stream flows a little bit. That obviously affects what's happening with the snow melt, with the rapid melt. Typically the rivers rise and continue to rise and kind of maintain a high flow this time of year, and really kind of into June before they start to mellow out. But we're going to see the peak stream flows, which we're seeing now, really mellow out much quicker than they have in the past. And that's attributed to the rapid snow melt that we've had and a lot of the dry conditions that evaporated the moisture. So this slide just kind of depicts where we're at now in 2020, and kind of comparing that to years past in 2013. So as you can see, it's very similar. And 2012 and 13 was a pretty active fire season here in Southwest Colorado. Moving along, there's a lot of charts here to look at. We don't have to go in detail here, but just kind of the water last 60 days and last 14 days and the deficits we've seen with the warmer temps and really no moisture. So the drought maps, these are good, nice, easy maps to look at and comparing with previous years, 2012, 2013, and of course 2018, which was a record fire season for us here in Southwest Colorado. As you can see, the dark red on May 22nd, 2018. And then where we're at today, you know, by May 19th, you see that red blob moving into Southwest Colorado, and that's expected to intensify over the next couple of weeks. So with the drought, currently in D2, moving into D3 very rapidly, and we don't anticipate that to improve anytime soon. So obviously it's been hot, dry, and windy over the last really month, and you can see the tables there and the charts that kind of depict where we've been at. We've had numerous red flag days, numerous fire weather watches really over the last 3 weeks that we haven't seen in a while. And just some CPC forecast here, looking you know, below normal precip and above normal temperatures. High temperatures is expected to continue here in Southwest Colorado over the next 14 days. And some more depictive graphs on really temperature and precipitation deficits in our area, especially the Front Range in Southwest Colorado. So a few precipitation outlooks really in the next 10 days, not looking like very favorable at all in the low country. We may get some isolated storms in the high country, but that'll most likely be pretty short-lived. So here's kind of a good depiction of our current fuels that we call our grasses, our shrubs, our trees, our brush. Lower and middle elevation is definitely, you know, as we talk about green up, that typically happens in the spring. It's been pretty short-lived and typically would continue through the month of May, but it looks like it's peaked, and we're going to see a lot of stunted green up going on as our green grass starts to cure out over the next couple of weeks, which is really 2 weeks earlier than what we call normal curing of our fuels. So that's only going to continue to worsen as we see the dry weather trend continuing to June. All right, as we talk about fire danger, it's a kind of a fancy word, energy release component. And the chart depicted on the right there, if you can look at the red line as vertical as it's moving, and the purple line that goes vertical of that is where we're expected to be in the next week or two. The blue line, as you can see, is average. So we're well above average in the lower zone as well as the upper zone. So we're talking below 7,000 feet and above 7,000 feet. Our energy release component graphs, if a fire were to start, would have typically on the right day a high rate of spread on that particular day. So it's a combination of that fuel dryness, the weather, all those things kind of put together in one chart to show the current fire danger that we're in right now, which is very high. So kind of putting it all together, we've got one more slide too, but all indicators support worsening drought conditions, above normal fire potential at all elevations. So when we talk about fire season, a lot of times it's the lower elevations, but similar to 2018, our higher elevations are definitely going to be more available over the next couple of weeks and through the month of June, similar to what we saw during the Burrow fire and the 416 fire. So if that kind of helps you compare that. So the combination between a stunted green up that's currently going on, that's starting to slow pretty quick, as well as the rapid snow melt. And there's really no relief in sight with the future forecast. So the last slide here, this was updated about a week and a half ago. And definitely you can see Southwest Colorado on the national radar now for increased fire potential in the coming months in June and July. So typically we all know June is a dry month anyways. So without the human starts or the lightning starts, fire potential is, it's there, but the starts have to happen for us to see that actually happen. With the high elevation areas definitely becoming burnable, like I mentioned, by mid-June, and that'll continue into July until the onset of the monsoons that we hope happen this year. As well as everybody knows, over the last really 2 years, we've really not had a true monsoon in Southwest Colorado. So we're hoping that to change. There's been no outlook on the monsoon yet. That typically does not happen until mid to late June. And so we'll have some more info when that comes out. But really to kind of sum it up, large fire potential forecast is definitely forecast to be above average across southwestern Colorado, and central Colorado is really already there. So really the whole southern state of Colorado is expected to have a fairly active fire season this year. So with that, that's about all I have.
Many thanks, Pat. That was excellent. I think you covered the one question that I saw pop up about any prognosis for the monsoons this year. And sounds like not until at least a month or so. And I don't see any other questions. I guess just from your perspective, if this is a pretty active fire year, how are you feeling with all of the precautions that are going to need to be taken, considering?
Yeah, good question. Typically every fire season, we are very prepared. As conditions change and worsen, we typically bring additional outside resources, which includes engines, hotshot crews, aviation, and that's fixed wing retardant planes, as well as rotor wing, which is additional helicopters in the zone to help boost our response times and resource capabilities. But what's different this year, obviously with the COVID-19 guidelines and precautions, the focus is on safety, and that's not just firefighter and first responder safety and exposure to unwanted fires, there's also a limited amount of resources that are able to currently travel and assist other areas with fire potential as well as ongoing fires. With that said, we have a proactive plan here on the San Juan National Forest that's actually already in place, and we do have quite a few additional resources, including a lot of helicopters and a lot of fixed wing aircraft for retardant already pre-positioned in our zone. Some out of Cortez and the rest in Durango with short flight times. And we also have smoke jumpers pre-positioned in Grand Junction for additional response times in remote areas. So we're feeling really good about our conditions and our resources right now, but conditions are going to worsen. And as the fire season goes on, because we nationally, those resources get sucked up on other priority fires throughout the nation. So we anticipate we will have to compete for additional resources, probably as early as mid to late June and through July, as the Northwest in California and to the south of us in Arizona and New Mexico just started their fire season and are probably 2 to 3 weeks ahead of us. So hopefully that kind of summarized where we're at. And all the mitigation factors are in place for keeping ourselves safe. And obviously this year's focus is to not have any fires or reduce the amount of fires that we have with preparedness and fire prevention efforts with fire restrictions that are currently in place on the San Juan National Forest. And those fire restrictions will definitely continue or likely to continue all the way through early July until we get some hopeful relief with the monsoon moisture. So that's where we're at.
Great. Well, much appreciated for sharing all of that and that excellent perspective. Hopefully we don't get there, but thanks. It looks like no other last minute questions for Pat. Pat, I'm wondering if you can also stop sharing your screen right now.
Yeah, you bet.
And, if anyone does have any questions for Pat, he'll be able to answer them after the webinar as well, or at the end of it. So thank you. And now I'm going to pass it over to Chief Mike Zion over here.
We should be on.
Okay. Hi, my name is Mike Zion. I'm the fire chief with Dolores Fire Protection District. And I'll just kind of bring you a little information on what we've done so far. We train every winter trying to get ready for the spring. We've already seen a few active fires from out of control burns, one from a lightning strike. Most of them are being carried by the ground fuels because the grass is still tall. The snowpack didn't really knock it down like it should have. So the fire is getting into those and carrying on into the brush and getting into the trees, but we're not seeing crown fires yet. Biggest one we had was in middle of April. It was about 2 acres down the bottom of a thick canyon. We were able to get on that quickly and suppress it. One of the best things we got going for us in this county is we have good mutual aid agreements with everybody in this county and Dolores County and all our federal and state partners. So, we have a lot of resources available to us when we do go on a fire if we need them. And one of the things I stress the most, if you even think you're getting out of control on a burn, because they are allowing controlled burns in Montezuma County still with permits, call quickly. If you see smoke, call quickly so we can get on it as quick as we can. It's best way to keep these things small is get on them fast and quick. And we try to do that. I've got a lot of young guys that are pretty enthusiastic about getting out and fighting these things. So they're always blowing and going when we get a call like that. But it is good, we don't mind going out on something. If you think you see something or smell something, we don't mind going out and looking, even if it turns out to be nothing. Don't ever apologize for that, because I always tell people I'd rather get on them quick than lose them later. So, and one of the best things you can do around your homes is keep it mitigated. Clear off the grasses, brush, firewood. And I'm sure Alex will get into that later about what you can do to around your homes. And he's always available if you want him to come out and look at your homes. Because if somebody calls me about it, that's who I send them to. He is the best resource we have around here for that kind of stuff. As far as our outlook, you know, we got our fingers crossed. It's going to be a dry season. We're already seeing the fires doing what they should do a month from now instead of now. We've had one lightning strike fire, which was a little early, just that little lightning storm that came through. And it burned about an acre real quickly. So fires are taking off, but it's still green enough. They're not getting catastrophic yet. But as the season goes on, like Pat said, it's going to get more and more critical that we get on these quickly and we don't do anything silly with fire and start anything that you can't get out. Other than that, I don't have a lot more to say, but just be safe out there, be careful, be very careful with your fire.
Great. Thanks so much for that perspective. And yeah, I really appreciate how you work with all the different entities, with the Forest Service and with Welfare Adaptive Partnership, and everyone to get the right resources in the right places, and obviously for everything that you and your district do. So
We have a great working relationship with everybody, and everybody helps each other out. And you have to do it in communities like this. So
Looks like Lila's asking if you guys carry heat-seeking temperature devices.
yes, we do. We have two different types we carry. We have a thermal imaging camera that we look for stuff with, and then we have just an actual heat detector that sets off an alarm if it goes, and you can hold it up to a light bulb and it'll take it off. Our thermal imaging cameras will pick up your foot tracks after you walked across the concrete floor. They're that sensitive. So we do have those resources and we do use them. After we get done with the fire, we'll go through a lot of times with the thermal imaging camera and check and try to find anything. Sometimes it'll show fires down in the roots that we don't see otherwise. You know, we try not to leave in an ember when we get done with the fire if we can, especially on years like this. Some years, you know, you can walk away and they're fine, but not this year, with the way things are starting to look.
Any other questions for Mike?
well, it looks like there maybe aren't any other questions right now. If anyone does have other questions for Mike, feel free to throw them in the chat whenever, and we can address them at the end of the webinar as well. Oh. Well, people are appreciating your trophies.
That's just a fraction of them.
Well, thank you so much for presenting. Thank you so much for all the work that you do. And yeah, you are obviously a critical resource for the community and for the area. What I want to do is give everyone a little background on some rapid risk assessments that were completed for the town of Dolores in the past couple of years. And I'm going to share my screen right now. And Alex Graff is going to be doing some follow-up on this. And so I'm just going to give a background. In 2018 and 2019, a Dwarf and Welfare Adaptive Partnership, in partnership with a variety of other folks as well, completed rapid risk assessments on every property and structure within Dolores. I think the only ones that maybe weren't completed were some vacant lots with nothing in them. And every property is receiving or received a rating from low to extreme fire risk. This risk is based on 11 different variables that range from emergency access to the property to defensible space around it to structural ignitability. And one thing that I want to emphasize is that these risk assessments were quite rapid. They were done from the roadside. They generally took 60 to 90 seconds or a little bit longer. And the idea and the goal of them was to get a general picture of the risk on a property and what the major risk factors were for your property. So the goal of this is to be a resource for the community that individuals will be able to see really quickly what their risk is based on a rubric that was developed by folks who study wildfire research, who study wildfire, and a rubric that is applied really throughout the state right now. And we're going to be reaching out to all homeowners about your risk assessment and your upcoming water bill. And so look for it in the coming weeks. The water bill should be going out, I think, mid next week, and it should be on it. There won't be that much information on the water bill itself. There isn't that much room on the water bill, but everyone will be receiving a link to a website as well as a unique code, and you'll be able to plug in the unique code directly into the website and get your risk assessment. You'll get a general risk rating for your property, but then on the website it breaks down the 11 different variables and gives you it gives you a rating for each of those variables. The idea is for you to be able to easily identify like what are the biggest risk factors for your property. And then also there's going to be some links for follow-up information. And mainly the links will be towards Alex. And I'm going to let Alex talk about what he does, but he is a really critical resource for individuals in Montezuma and Dolores County to learn about ways to address their risk, address your risk, address your home ignition zone, and make your home more fire resilient. So on that note, I am going to pass it over to Alex right now.
Great, thanks so much, Danny. Thanks to Pat and Mike also for presenting really important perspectives to have, and just thinking about the seasonal outlook. Even though we're looking at some dry and hot and some potentially extreme conditions for this year, I just always want to reiterate that the key to being wildfire adapted or being a resilient community is working on this stuff every single year, regardless of what kind of season it is. It's kind of being committed to mitigation, just like I said, regardless of what type of fire season is, because the reality is that in Southwest Colorado, we have to figure out how to learn with fire. So I am going to share my screen here. Let's see. And going to do a brief presentation here, just trying to bring all these things together a little bit, thinking about wildfire risk and what next steps are, what type of resources are out there. For those of you who don't know me, Danny gave me a brief introduction. My name is Alex Graff, and I am the Montezuma County Coordinator for Wildfire Adapted Partnership. I also work in Dolores County. And so I just want to give a brief overview of Wildfire Adapted for those of you who might not know too much about who we are. So Wildfire Adapted started in 2003 after the Missionary Ridge Fire. We were formerly known as Firewise of Southwest Colorado, and we're a small nonprofit operating in the 5 southwestern counties of Colorado. And we really work in communities, in neighborhoods to promote resiliency, fire adaptation. And the backbone of Wildfire Adapted are our neighborhood ambassadors. We have about 150 neighborhood ambassadors all across the 5 southwest counties, who know their neighborhoods best, know the needs, know the roads, know the egresses, know the people. And they really are the folks who figure out how to implement mitigation in a way that's appropriate in their community. So I always have to give a shout out to all those folks that are extremely dedicated. So I want to give a brief overview, a super quick overview of what we call the home ignition zone. And this is kind of just the best way, in my opinion, to think about wildfire mitigation around the home. And Wildfire Adapted, we are planning on teaching kind of a longer, a more in-depth home ignition zone course. I think it's typically about 8 hours. So I'm going to give you the super abbreviated version of that. Try to fit it into just a couple minutes. So here's a bit of a blurry photo, but this is kind of a visual representation of what the home ignition zone is. And it's really the marriage of two concepts in terms of ignition. We're thinking about structures first and foremost, and that paired with defensible space. So those two concepts are what we call the home ignition zone. And so, sorry about that. Just had something in the chat there. So basically, it's the marriage of these two concepts: structural ignitions and defensible space, and both are equally important. We don't just on defensible space and forget entirely about structural ignitions, and we don't want to think just about structural ignitions and forget about defensible space. Really, working on both of these things at the same time are crucial. So I want to just break down what I mean when I say structural ignition a little bit more. So from wildfire research, post-wildfire research, folks have figured out that the majority of homes that do burn in wildfire events are not consumed by kind of this spectacle wall of flames that's coming towards a town. Mainly homes are burnt due to firebrands or embers. And so when I'm talking about structural ignitions, we're thinking a lot about how embers can kind of infiltrate a home or turn what is basically the size of a match into a structural ignition. Something I always say when I'm doing site visits is, imagine creating a campfire. You don't create a campfire by throwing a match at a super large diameter log. You have to have fine fuels to build that campfire. And so this is kind of what I'm showing you in these two photos. On the left here, we have a valley and a roof. And this is, you can see the accumulation of fine fuels in there. And this roof is also shake shingle, which is a red flag for sure if I was doing a site assessment. And on the right here, we have some eaves that have some venting. This is another really important thing to think about in a structural context. Any way that an ember can enter into the home, we have to pay really close attention to that. And the solution to most entry points in terms of embers, as you see on the left here, this is 1/8 inch metal screening. And this is going to prevent most embers, or pretty much all embers, from entering your home, all dangerous embers, basically. So these are just examples of things I mean when I say structural ignitions. These are places to pay really close attention. On the right here, we have deck with some pretty overgrown vegetation underneath there. And the truth of the matter is, if your deck is attached to your home, it's part of your home. A lot of times I see some old decks, wooden decks, decks with a lot of debris underneath. And these are places really to pay attention. Enclosing decks, whether that be with metal, wood, basically preventing embers from getting underneath the deck is crucial. So this is kind of a basic picture of what I mean by structural ignition. I want to continue on with defensible space. So home ignition zone is thinking about structural ignitions and defensible space. And defensible space is more of kind of your typical, what you would imagine in terms of wildfire mitigation, in terms of fuel reduction. So this is where we break it up into different zones, zone 1, 2, and 3. And we always work from the home outward. You don't really want to invest hours and hours into zone 3, the larger landscape, if you have a mess of junipers right up against the side of your house. You always want to work from your house outwards. And what this looks like a lot of times is, the stuff we're familiar with: chainsaws, limbing, thinning out, basically disrupting both the horizontal and vertical continuity of fuels or vegetation in order to create space that is defensible in terms of fire personnel, and in a way that will just disrupt severe fire behavior in an effort to drop it to the ground, make it manageable, basically. Whew. So that's the basic overview of the home ignition zone. The really kind of hot take there. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I put in a little piece about preparedness, emergency preparedness. So I gotta say just a brief spiel on this. I'd highly encourage anybody and everybody in Montezuma, Nixle. You can go to nixle.com, enter your zip code, or text your zip code to 888-777. This will allow you to receive text emergency notifications to your phone. Bear in mind, it's only kind of in service when you're in service, so it's not fail-proof in that sense, but it's a really good way. If you know you're going to be in service, you're going to get an alert. That being said, it's always, as we're learning in fires in California, it's always important to err on the side of caution. Even if you don't get an alert, be in communication with neighbors, be in communication with as many people as possible. And another couple pieces I like to put in here, reflective address signs are crucial. Thinking about go bag, something you can grab really quick in an evacuation, and creating evacuation lists are really crucial, in my opinion, in this scenario of evacuating. You don't want to have to think about where your items are. So having that in a list where you don't even have to think, you can just go down the list and grab, is crucial. So there's my spiel on preparedness. So with kind of a home ignition zone perspective, I want to follow up with some wildfire adapted programs for 2020 that are specific to Montezuma County, really. Dolores County partially, and I'll explain that just in a moment here. So the first program, which has been a historic program for wildfire adapted for a while now, are our wildfire risk assessments, free home assessments, basically. So the way you sign up for this is through our website, wildfireadapted.org. You navigate to programs and you'll get to wildfire risk assessment. You can just kind of enter your information and that will be sent to me. A risk assessment basically takes about 1 hour, and it will involve me coming out to your property, meeting with you in person, talking about your concerns, and kind of tailoring wildfire mitigation strategy to what I see from my perspective is the most pressing need. And so we'll talk about, just like I mentioned in the home ignition zone part, we'll talk about structural ignitions, we'll talk about defensible space. We can even talk about zone 3, that greater landscape, if that's something you're interested in. Totally free. Please get in touch with me or go to our website for more information. I'll put my contact info up in just 1 second. And this kind of leads me to a really cool program that we have specifically in Montezuma County. This year, we're doing more defensible space cost shares. So these projects always have to start out with a site assessment, basically. This is a reimbursement incentive program to reimburse homeowners for wildfire mitigation that's done on their property. And again, I just want to emphasize that to be eligible for reimbursement through Wildfire Adapted Partnership, we have to go through our process, which starts off with a site assessment. And basically, we're typically able to reimburse folks, given they go through the process, about 40 to 45% of the total mitigation cost. And some folks are a little bit nervous about getting chainsaws on the ground, how that's going to affect their views, how that's going to affect the trees, which is, you know, why we love to live out in Southwest Colorado. And I just have some visual evidence here that you can do wildfire mitigation in a way that doesn't destroy the reasons you love the place you live. Here's a prime example. It totally opened up the view in this instance and made it a lot safer from a wildfire perspective. Another one here, a lot of these projects end up turning, they kind of have a feel of a park, like you're in a national park, at least from my biased perspective at the end. Nonetheless, they can really reduce risk on your property. Again, all that starts with a site assessment. So that being said, please sign up for a site assessment at wildfireadapted.org. You can get into contact with me. Here's my email address and phone number. Don't be afraid of the 845 area code. And yeah, please feel free to reach out with any questions at all. And that's kind of what I got for everybody today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alex. I'm wondering, I'm looking through if there are any questions here in the chat. If anyone has a question specifically for Alex right now, don't hesitate to throw it in the chat.
Hey, Danny, this is Becca.
Greetings.
Great.
What? Yeah.
I'm trying to watch chat and co-conspire with you guys as well, but I did want to mention just a couple of brief things from my perspective. And this effort is pretty cool for people to be a part of here in Southwest Colorado. It's really one of the leading examples in the nation of collaborative cross-boundary work happening. And there's just a tremendous amount of support here in Southwest Colorado. When you see the list of stakeholders on your Dwarf Collaborative, Dolores Watershed, Resilient Forest Collaborative list, you can really see how much professional support there is in this community for people to do great work. But it really takes everybody to address the kind of wildfire potential disasters that we could have here and to try to get ahead of those and be more prepared. And just a couple of resources I mentioned while Alex was typing, really important this year for people to know where you're going to go if you have to evacuate, not to plan on going to a shelter, because that's going to potentially be really squirrely this year and maybe not the place you want to be. And FEMA has great resources as well as Ready, Set, Go program. And Alex can provide that stuff directly as well, but if you just want to look for an easy resource, check out FEMA.gov or ready.gov. To put together your Go kits. And then I also just wanted to mention another cool thing that the Forest Service is doing. If you're looking for a project next week and you've done all the projects around your house, the firewood permits for personal use are for free, self-serve. You can go pick up a firewood permit instead of paying $10 for 2 cords of wood. You can pick up that permit and go get 10 cords of wood from somewhere on the forest where thinning is being done to help improve the forest health and reduce fire risk out there.
Absolutely. Thanks for that update. Is that, and I feel like that is available through the end of the month or early June. Is that correct?
I think the original was through the end of May. Pat, if you're still on, maybe you know. But what I originally saw, I do believe, was just through the end of this month.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Through the end of this month, and they're going to reassess where it goes from there.
Great. I am going to throw on the screen contact information for everyone who's on the line, just so everyone who's listening can get in touch with us if you so desire. And, you know, I do really want to encourage people to use the resources out there. So just as a reminder, everyone's going to be getting a rapid risk assessment. If you're in the town of Dolores, in the coming water bill, if for some reason it's not in the coming water bill, it'll be through a direct mailing that will show up not too long after, within the next few weeks. And so just keep your eye out for that. If you're outside of the town of Dolores and you do want to learn more about your properties and your home's wildfire risk, contact Alex Graff. He'll be able to give you a site assessment for free and provide more resources. And I know that while we have an audience, there probably won't be much smoke in the air from prescribed fire this year. But that's often, around this time is often when you would start seeing some prescribed fire happening if this wasn't such a strange year. And if you're at all interested in getting involved with the Dwarf Collaborative, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Visit our website. Our meetings are the first Wednesday of every month, and all of that information is on our website right now. We've been having them through Zoom meetings for the past few months and will for June as well. But beyond that, we'll see if we can have them as in-person meetings again. And as Becca said, we have a lot of great partners. Everyone here is a partner of the collaborative, and I just want to express all of my gratitude to all of the excellent partners out there and all of the people working together for shared goals of reducing wildfire risk, of improving resilience and ecosystem function in the forest, and just reducing the likelihood that our communities will have kind of severe impacts of wildfire. That's all I have for the evening. I'm wondering if anyone else on the line has any other parting thoughts.
I was just going to say that I'm pretty sure we're all ready for the smoke impacts because we've all got our masks already.
Well said. Well, thank you, everyone. If you know of anyone who wanted to see this webinar but wasn't able to view it, it will be available on YouTube, and I'll make sure a link to that is on our website, the Dolores Rush Music Forest Collaborative website as well. And yeah, hope to be in touch with you. It's a new world just kind of projecting out into the YouTube ether, but I appreciate everyone signing in and participating. Are there any other final questions? It looks like no final questions, and so thank you, and we'll sign off.
Thanks, everyone.